This lesson is dedicated to making a waterfall candle. As you can see, the pattern is quite simple. It consists of repeating petal loops, and in the end we add a new element which is called the crown. This candle is perfect for beginner level and training because you can feel the material, understand how it is being cut, bent and fixed at the candle. To make this candle, you will need a hexahedral bevel base, a simple cutting knife and a round knife with the smallest diameter for cutting an upper part of the candle. Speaking about color patterns, you can use our app to choose the one you like and use any of them in the future. Let's start cutting. First of all, we should remove the excessive paraffin from the candle wick on the top of the candle. Be very careful so as not to damage the wick itself, and make sure to remove all colored pieces of paraffin. Then trim the bottom in any convenient way so the candle stands flat and doesn't bend later on. After that, put the candle on the table and see if the bottom is really flat. Now we can start carving the elements of the pattern. The waterfall consists of repeating loop elements. The first one should be carved at approximately 1/3 of the candle's height. First of all, make marks so the level of the elements is the same on the whole candle. Use the rear side of the knife that doesn't leave cuts, and then start carving. Carve approximately a half of the chosen height, making the tip thin and the root thick. Then bend the petal down and press it to the candle very well, fixing it firmly. Try to make all elements of the same thickness. The way the colors in the pattern open up will guide you on how thick the petals should be. Don't be in a hurry to open up all the colors and layers that you dipped at the very first elements. The first petals should be quite thin and they only open the last layers. Don't forget that both levels should be kept the same, the upper level of carving and the lower level of fixing the petal. In the end, rotate the candle and make sure everything is even. Then start making the next row. Move up 1 or 1.5 centimeter up and carve another petal with a thin tip and a thick root, as always. As before, cover half of the distance between the tip of the new petal and the root of the previous one. Fix the tip in the groove, attaching it to the root of the previous petal. Repeat the same action on the rest of the candle. Make sure that all the petals you carve are the same. They shouldn't be too plump and stand away from the candle too much, or cling to it too tightly. After this row is finished, turn the candle again. Then start the next row. Move up another centimeter and perform the same actions. Depending on how quickly you carve and which level you carve on, the number of petals can change. If you have more rows, you need to carve faster before the candle gets cold. If you are a beginner, don't set too high goals. Make the distance between the petals 1.5 centimeter long, because that way you'll get less petals and more time to finish the candle. Move up again and carve another row. See that the petals on one edge make one line and don't get out of it at the sides. Each new petal opens up the color pattern a bit more than the previous one. If you look at the first petals, yellow is not visible there at all. Gradually moving up each row, it comes out more and more. In the end, when you have about 1.5 or 2 centimeters left, you can divide the distance in half. One of these rows will repeat the loop element again, and the final element will be different from all the rest. It's called the crown. Don't forget about the petal tips and roots. The tips should be thinner than the roots. Now we can start carving the crown. To do this, take the maximum height of the candle, but don't move over the place where the edges becomes round. Only carve the vertical part of the candle. This time, the element is carved down to the very root of the previous element. It's the same level that the previous loop was carved at. Carve it and then fix it lightly to the lower petal. Then fix the tip of the crown to the candle, but don't stretch it. And don't try to fix it at the same place where you started carving it. Fix it at the place where the petal reaches. See that the widest part of the petal and the most volume of it are at the root, and then it becomes thinner on the way to the tip. Make firm roots. And see that you leave at least a little space between the edges, even at the last row. In the end, check and clean everything. When the last row is finished, look at the candle from each side and clean up whatever was left. Make sure once again that all loops on one edge make one line. If one of the elements looks bigger than the others, press it slightly to the base. And if it looks smaller, plump it up. And use the knife to do so. Now the last step is left, which is to cut the top of the candle. Take the candle off the hook, straighten the wick, then take a round knife of the smallest diameter, place it right in the middle of the candle, and press it into 5 to 6 millimeters deep. And then take the knife out. In most cases, the paraffin gets out with the knife, but if it doesn't, carefully pick it up with the cutting knife. Our candle is ready, and now we need to varnish it. The candle is ready, and let's have a look at it once again and see what else can be done. While carving the petal loops, pay attention that they make one line. They should all be even and not stand out or cling to the candle too tightly. This depends directly on how you carve the petals. In general, about 85% of carving a candle successfully depends on how you make the cuts. If all petals are the same in width and length, then they will form even patterns on the candle. This way the candle will be very neat and beautiful, and the petals will be placed evenly. According to your wish, this pattern can be made more or less difficult. During the first times of carving this type of candle, you can carve few rows of petals. In this case, the spans between the rows should be made wider. The petals will be bigger, but you'll have to make less of them. And if you want to make the pattern more complicated, then make the spans narrower, and the pattern will become more delicate. However, remember that the time to carve a candle is limited, so you should think in advance if you are able to carve it until it gets cold. Begin with a simpler pattern and then make the task more difficult. You can also add some elements between the edges with the help of an extra loop knife, but we'll talk about it in the next videos. Carve this candle pattern 4 or 5 times to secure the result and perfect your skill. If you don't feel too confident and satisfied with the result, repeat 10 times. The next patterns will only be more difficult, so you have to be prepared for them.